it's all about the time horizon as opposed to the market that you're invested in. And even Bitcoin, I mean, how many people do we hear say, oh, this is, it's a safe investment and it's just going to keep growing and it's going to turn me into a gazillionaire. And it has with a lot of people. But there's a lot of risk in getting into Bitcoin as well. It's all about the long game in any market that we invest in.
Wake up, it's time to rise. Talking money with sharp insight. Jim and Ryan here to guide. Mastering the money ride. Saving stacks and planning dreams. Living large by honest means. Tune in now for the schemes. Breaking down financial themes. Money mindset every day.
Welcome, everyone, to the Money Mindset Mastery Podcast. This is the final episode of 2025. I'm your host, Jim. Yeah, and we have our famous Mythbuster here, Eric Petersen, joining us from lovely Edmonton, Alberta. Eric, how are you doing?
Doing great. Finally got winter here, which as an Edmontonian is a good thing. I know you guys prefer your warmer weather, but I got to get the skis warmed up and do some skiing this holidays.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one thing I've never really tried. So maybe the next time I come out to Edmonton, you'll take me out on a little bit of a ski tour. How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Awesome. That would be fun. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about some myths. As Ryan mentioned, we're going to be doing some myth busting today. And there's 5 myths that we're going to bust today in 2025. Some of these actually have been beyond just 2025 as well, right? So we're going to go through some of these and let's see how this rolls today, because we're trying to deal with these technical issues. And anyways, we'll keep going. Myth number 1. This is actually one that I've been talking about for quite a long time. Debt is always bad. So can you expand on that or elaborate, or Eric, can you?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, it's kind of an interesting story. When I bought my first house, I was in university, and talking to one of my mentors, and I was complaining to him about how I now had this big debt on my balance sheet, and how it just kind of annoyed me. And he said, "Well, hang on a second here." He's like, "I have a goal, and my goal is to have $5 million in debt." And I was like, "What? Like, why would you want debt?" And he said, well, if you have $5 million in responsible debt and you're doing things like buying assets that have a good return, he said that's an indication that you're progressing, you're growing, and it really turned the whole concept on its head for me, because at that point in life I only really understood what consumer debt was. Business debt was kind of a new concept to me, and so yeah, debt in certain circumstances, if you're buying assets that are going to appreciate in value or generate income or return, all of a sudden debt becomes an instrument rather than a negative.
Yeah, I think the traditional definition of good debt and bad debt is good debt is any debt that you can claim the interest expense as an expense to offset any income that you earn, right? Where bad debt is you can't claim any of that. But I know some people, like to your point, Eric, you'd mentioned about buying an asset that's appreciating. In Canada, we could buy a home, primary residence, have a mortgage on it. Technically, most people would consider that as bad debt because you can't claim the interest expense on that mortgage. I would argue that you are purchasing an investment asset. So maybe it's not as efficient as taking on that bad debt to purchase an investment that you can claim the interest expense. But the bottom line is if you're paying, call it on average 4% per year on your mortgage, and your real estate appreciates at 5% per year, you're not doing too badly. Ideally, you want to maybe take that same interest cost and invest it in something that's earning you a rate of return so you can claim the interest expense. So then again, if you're at a 50% tax bracket, that 4% is really 2% net, right? That's really, I think, the definition, right? But I do know, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of people, Ryan, so have you. And I think it's more older clients who have kind of experienced 1981, 1982 where all debt is bad debt. I don't care if you can claim it, don't claim it, whatever else. If you carry debt and you're paying someone interest, that's just bad debt, right? You've come across that many times, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I was talking about business growth. So when it comes to talking to a lot of owners who want to grow their business, being able to take out a business loan and expand their operations is a great way to ensure that they're able to grow, and taking on that debt is often looked upon as a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Let's go to the next thing. You need a lot of money to start investing. That's another one. All right. And I have to apologize. This is the last one of the year. It almost feels like it's the first one of the year right now, the way things are going. But in saying all that, and Ryan, maybe you can mute yourself again. All right. There, you're muted. You need a lot of money to start investing. I don't believe that's true. I think if we look at the benefit of compound interest over an extended period of time, that you start off small, right? And eventually that would accumulate over many years. So you can start off with, I mean, our example here is $100 a month. If you had it, for example, in an index fund for 20 years at a 7% rate of return, over a 20-year period, that $100 a month would grow to approximately $60,000 in market value. And that doesn't include any taxes taken off of that. That's just a gross number. So, Eric, do you have any thoughts on that yourself?
Yeah, it's really. I've got kids that are in their early adult years, and I think one of the concepts that's really hard to get over is, like I can start saving later, or I can. There's 100 reasons why someone can say I just can't afford to do it right now, and what people often overlook is that time value of money. And $1 today is worth so much more than $1 10 years from now. And a lot of times people will look back on their life and say, and I think you guys talked about this in your recent podcast about Christmas presents, think back to all of the things you spent money on, and what sticks in your mind. Very, very little of it does. And so the things that you do remember are what you hold on to. And I often tell my clients, like, yeah, you just got to start with $10 a month, start with $100 a month, start with something achievable. And when you realize that you don't even notice it, then you can start to turn the volume up. And I think that's the key, is that most people just need to understand that really the whatever amount they're going to put away, they really won't even notice it in the grand scheme of things. And 10 years down the road, it'll be one of the few things they remember putting money towards.
And when it comes to the coaching piece, you hit the nail on the head, which is this is about creating habits, right? It's the power of the habit of constantly putting these things away, not seeing it. So often during our coaching sessions, people forget about how powerful that can become, of just putting small amounts away. And that in our reviews and collections with clients of meeting with them, hey, how did that feel? Whether it's $100 and then perhaps moving up to $125. And before you know it, people are up to $200 or $300 a month, which is expediting kind of the calculation Jim talked about earlier too.
Yeah, and I know it kind of talks a little bit here about some apps that you can use, because if you work, for example, with a financial advisor, they might not be able to take on $25 a month as a starting point. We can. We have access to programs that will allow that, and we do that with kids of our clients, right? To teach them in saving money and what that really means ultimately. So you can research some of your own apps if you like, but the problem with those apps is all it's going to do is help you learn how to save money. It doesn't teach you about money, right? That's really what our role is as advisors. I think probably, Eric, with what you do on the private side, a little bit more difficult in trying to find a solution at $25 a month. Would that be accurate?
Yes, yeah. I've always kind of leaned on something simple like an index fund, which gets the job done, but there's a lot of other options that might be better. But yeah, a lot of the minimums in the private equity world are around 10,000, sometimes more, sometimes less. But you kind of already have to have accumulated a bit of a lump sum before you're looking at the private equity options.
So the bottom line is you don't really need a lot of money to start investing, right? It's just whatever a little bit you have. If you don't want to, from a budgeting point of view, systemically put something aside every month, if you have, again, some of these online tools, you can just at the end of each month, at the end of each pay, take a X amount and invest it if you'd like. So you can have a little bit more control over it. So definitely a lot more easier today with technology than it used to be in doing some of these things. I know when I grew up reading The Wealthy Barber did suggest paying yourself 10% first before you pay anything else. I think that formula has changed a bit. I believe now it's 15 or 20%, but it's a start, right?
Yeah, and he's updated his book too, so I'm interested to see what he says now with it. And it's funny because I had a janitor when I was in grade 5, 6, 7, and 8, and I'm sure everybody's heard this story, and this may be actually him. And he was Italian janitor, and he always used to say to us about the power of like doing the little things, because he'd obviously be the person to clean the school, but on weekends he drove a Ferrari. Jim's goal right there. So, and he put those small amounts away, and the importance of making sure that you create that behavior and that habit early.
So what you're saying is if you want me to own a Ferrari one day, I need to change careers and become a school janitor. Is that what it is? All right. Done. Done. Alrighty, well, let's go to myth number 3. And again, speaking of The Wealthy Barber, I believe in his updated book now he talks about investing in indexes or index funds as well. So how about the myth that the market is just too risky right now, so you just kind of sit on the sidelines? I think I've come across people who believe that, and they've sat on the sidelines for years and years and really just missed a boat. So, Eric, maybe you can pick up on that.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, especially when you're saving, volatile markets almost get averaged out if you're doing something regularly, and it's called dollar cost averaging. A lot of people really know about it, but a lot of people don't. And I mean, if the market crashes and you're putting $100 and the market bounces back, you put in $100, and the market crashes again, you put in $100. Well, you're buying, you average out a lot of that volatility, especially during your accumulation phase. So really, when it comes down to it, there's no excuse to start today. And if the market volatility really is something that's hard for you, well, pick a high interest account. You're still further ahead than you were 3 months ago. And that accumulation, that experience will help you prepare for looking at other risks and seeing how you could diversify what you're doing. But even a savings account, that's a simple, easy place to start, and you're further ahead month after month than if you hadn't saved.
Well, let's define the market's too risky, right? Because what is the market? Like a lot of people assume, well, the stock market, well, that's too risky, or the housing market, that's too risky, right? But if you are invested in a well diversified portfolio, chances are you might be invested in some markets that are riskier today than they may be tomorrow. But there's also a good chance that you're not going to be in, or you're going to be invested in something that's less risky today as well, right? So it's funny when I hear people say, well, the market's really risky. Well, what market are we referring to? Are we talking about European market, Asian market, the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market, I don't know, hockey cards market? Like there's so many different markets that we can be referring to. So it's a general statement, right, Eric? And Ryan as well. Like it's a general statement, but if you're diversified in a portfolio like we encourage our people to do, right? They're going to be in different markets, and they're not all going to be risky at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And really, that's an indication of someone who really just needs more understanding and more education in what the market means, where they can invest that has less risk or more risk. So yeah, that's a good point I hadn't considered before.
And the importance that we walk through with clients too, of making sure that we understand what their risk tolerance is and what they will feel when the market's down 5%, 10%, 30%. Because there's plenty of clients that I work with that are like, I know the market goes up and down, but I want to take a lot of risk. And to lose, $10,000 for somebody on a $100,000 investment is not a big deal to them, because they know that over time it'll eventually come back. But for some people, losing $1,000 on a $100,000 investment means they're not sleeping at night. And that's the importance of doing regular reviews, having different goals for different investments and different strategies to make sure that you're retaining them across different boards. And again, having the proper support, proper coach that kind of helps support you and educates you along the way. And that's often what I see with a lot of clients, is the reason why they don't want to take any risk is because they have a misunderstanding of what risk is and the different tolerances and the time frame that all leads to these types of things. So education is a key piece. Obviously, we do that very much with our clients, is talking them through and making sure they truly understand what the risk is. And
I think that's a really good point, because again, we talk about markets. I don't know how many times I've sat down with a client who says, I'm putting all my money into gold and precious metals because you never lose your money in gold. Well, gold didn't start off at $4,000 an ounce. It started off, I don't know what the number is, but it was definitely less than $10 at one point, right? And it's appreciated over time. And usually when someone makes that comment is because they're kind of comparing it to the stock market, right? Well, the stock market, you always lose money, right? And you don't make money in the stock market. But hey, if you put all in gold, you're just going to keep making money all the time. It's not true, because even the TSX didn't start at, it's over 30,000 right now, I believe. It didn't start at that. Like, it started off at $100, I believe it was. I could be wrong, but it was in that range, right? And so it's amazing how perception and an understanding of risk and the markets are basically just spoiled. They really are. The housing market, like I hate to say, because we're advocates of investing in real estate, we've gone through a good 15-year period approximately where real estate was just appreciating, like it was one of the best investments you could be in. Well, we're dealing with a bit of a blip right now, right? And there are a lot of people who are losing money currently in the real estate market, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good long-term strategy. So I think really what we're trying to say in all this is it's all about the time horizon as opposed to the market that you're invested in. Even Bitcoin. I mean, how many people do we hear say, "Oh, this is it's a safe investment and it's just going to keep growing and it's going to turn me into a gazillionaire," and it has with a lot of people, but there's a lot of risk in getting into Bitcoin as well. It's all about the long game in any market that we invest in. And even Eric, some of the investments that you offer, they're all pretty much long game strategies, right? There is no short term roll of the dice, and you're going to have a home run out of that investment. They are a hold type of strategy, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think you struck on it when you were talking about the markets and staying in long term. I think there are people that lose a lot of the stock markets, but they're the ones that will try to time it, or will get scared and pull out too early, or that's one of the beauties of the private market, is that you're often tied into these things. You don't have a parachute cord to pull, so you have to commit to the full cycle. And it's the full cycle when you see the benefit of the average, and a lot of people just don't have the patience, or they get scared, or, there's a lot of reasons that people will do that. And yeah, that's one reason I like the private market is it's very steady, but it's steady because it's long term. It's very, you're thinking 5, 6, 7, 10 years out when you invest in that, not, what's the market doing today or tomorrow or next week when Trump tweets or whatever it happens to be. There's a lot more micro to watch in the markets, which I think leads to that thought process of it's too risky. There's too many things that'll affect it going up and down. Well, if you can close your eyes for a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, you probably won't see all of that volatility, but it's hard for some people to do.
You said a word that is very important. You said scarce. And this is something that it is uncovering within coaching, and having the right support system is, where did your belief come from in the beginning? Why are you scared about this market? What happened to you? Did you receive the wrong advice? Did you have the wrong advising team? Or are you listening to what your parents or grandparents felt because they lived the Depression. We've talked about this. They lived through the 1980s and the way mortgage rates and the cost of gas, all these things happen. So where do those beliefs come from? Are they your beliefs, or are they the beliefs of somebody that is a generation or two generations behind you, and then it's just ingrained in you? So it's something that we uncover through the coaching piece, is where did that habit or that belief come in? And that's an important thing to tackle when it comes to, oh, the market too risky? Because you can miss out on some really big things that can really push your goals forward if you still believe that certain things are too risky.
Well, and one thing that people often overlook when they're saying something is too risky, like if you just hold Canadian dollar, you're going to lose to inflation. And it's been, let's say the average is 2.5%. That's a pretty widely accepted average. The last few years, it's been higher than that to whatever degree. But if you decide to just, well, I don't want risk, well, that's a risk in itself. Not doing something causes a 2.5% erosion per year to what you're not doing something with, or the risks you're not willing to take. So that's what a lot of people will overlook, is the risk of not doing anything is often, costly in its own right.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes not doing anything is the right move as well, right? Like I know a lot of my clients who've worked with me for many, many years, I don't get the phone calls anymore when we have market corrections because they already know what my response is, which is we do nothing, right? I remember one time I was trying to tease my son, with a dad joke, and it went quiet. He didn't say anything at all, and I was expecting a response from him. And I asked him, I'm like, Liam, like, aren't you going to respond to that? And he looked at me and goes, Dad, sometimes not responding is the response, right? And when it comes to investing, I kind of take the same approach, right? Because if you look at missing the best 10 days in the market over 20 years can cut your returns in half. And a lot of times when you pull out when you're dealing with the volatility, you're missing out on some really strong rebounds and returns, right? So a lot of times for my strategy has been do nothing, just ride it out, right? And that'll be your best option. Or if you have the guts to do it, put more money in the so-called market while you're dealing with the storm. And I had some clients do that with us during 2008, and they have fared really well. It was a roller coaster ride, but they did really well, But most people, we would just kind of like, just hold, do nothing. We'll get through this. Not a problem. All right. Ryan, you're the cash flow coach here. So budgeting means cutting out everything fun. Is that true?
You've said the B word. Oh man, ending the year off with the B word, budgeting. No, again, it doesn't involve cutting out everything that's fun, but it does involve really truly understanding your cash flow. And if more and more people understood their cash flow, what's coming in versus what's going out, I think through the coaching, people realize that they have a lot of money just bleeding in areas that they don't use. Again, there's always the argument, should I cut my $12 Starbucks coffee out of my thing? Hey, if you plan for that, well, then that's part of your cash flow in and out. But there's a lot of things to consider. We've talked in the past, people use different kind of equations of the 50-30-20 rule, 30% being allowed to have fun, to do the dinners, to do the vacations. But it really makes sure that you're very aware of what's going on with your money going out. I know from the coaching, I know from talking with clients that are considering the coaching too, they have no idea what's going out. And that's part of how we kind of reel people in and get them into a place where their money is actually starting to work for them, instead of having that stress of being like, oh, my debt is X amount, and where am I going to find the next dollar for my kids' new hockey equipment, stuff like that. So it's important to have these conversations, especially with couples, and to have this conversation with yourself, like a true conversation with yourself. So
yeah, and budgeting itself, like I always equate these to dieting. So I know one of the things is saying that a good budget gives freedom, not restriction. I think that's bull hogwash because budgeting is very restrictive. You're being told to don't spend over this allotted number, and it just might not be the right thing to do. I mean, we've known a lot of cases where, well, 90% of the time, people who follow budgets within about 3 months they kind of fall off the wagon again because they feel like they've deprived themselves, and sometimes they put themselves in a worse situation than they were in before they started the budgeting. What's your thoughts on budgets? I don't think we've ever really talked about that. Is that something you've encouraged people to do? You've helped people with? What's your opinion on budgeting?
Yeah, I think it's a very personal issue because some people do better in budgeting than others. But I think it is important for everybody to review what they're doing. When my oldest moved out of the house and kind of was complaining about, now he's got rent and all of these things and he's not sure how he's going to make ends meet, I said, well, tell you what, pull down 6 months of your transactions and let's go through everything. And when we averaged it out to a year, one of the things that it blew my mind that he had spent this much on it, as well as him, he had $6,000 a year in skip the dishes for Tim Hortons ice cap and plain cream cheese bagels. And I was just like, what would you do with $6,000? He's like, there's 1,000 things I would do with $6,000. And so I said, well, like, what are you going to do about that? And so, I mean, now he buys a bag of 6 bagels and a pack of cream cheese for less than what one cream cheese bagel from Tim Hortons being delivered through Skip would cost. And so at a minimum, people need to be aware of their spending patterns. And you can only really see those patterns if you break it down. And taking the next step to actually write a budget works for some people. Other people will make the budget and then never look at it again. I think overall, the exercise of going through it, it makes you aware. I think that's an important step. And then how regimented you become from what you've planned really becomes a personal thing. But knowledge is power. I think that's the key, is going back and saying, holy, I spent this much at Starbucks. Like, it doesn't take much. You do it 5 or 6 times a month and you're at $100 a month, and all of a sudden, what else would you do with that $100 a month? Talking about is it restrictive or is it freedom? Well, if you'd rather go out with your spouse for a nice dinner than have 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 Starbucks drinks, well, then that's freedom in my mind, because you're now trading something that is less important for something that's more important.
Well, Eric, you visited my house for a couple of days, and you saw that because my son, same issue. He likes his cold brew coffees from Tim Hortons. So I invested, what was it, $800 in a Ninja Deluxe Cafe Pro thingamajiggy that can make those
An impressive machine.
right? Yeah, so that was my investment. That's how I'm going to justify the investment, is probably saved me about $5,000 a year in cold brew coffees.
Yeah.
Can't hear you.
I'm going to steal from Tony Robbins, which is knowledge is potential power. It's the action of taking these steps that is the true result.
Excellent clarification. Yeah.
There you go. Alrighty, final myth here. Financial success is all about luck, right? That's really what it's all about. It's just kind of rolling the dice, and you have to be lucky, and that's the only way you're going to deal with financial success. Is that true? Anyone want to take this?
Well, I've heard the saying. I'm going to totally botch it up, but the principle remains true, and that is, luck is a benefit to those who are prepared. Like there's a lot of times in life where you look back and you thought, man, I got lucky that I was at the right place at the right time. Well, no, you didn't get lucky. You were at the right place at the right time for that event to happen. And so a lot of people say, well, yeah, I wish I could have been there in 2008 with lots of cash to put into the markets. Well, preparation and being ready and participating is what would put you in that position. And so I think luck is definitely a factor. Luck only works for people who are ready when that comes. And I think that having a plan really is the basis to let you capitalize on those moments of luck.
Yeah, it's all about habits, planning, and mindset, right? Not chance. So you're pointing at me, Ryan?
Well, You were talking about habits, and that's what luck is, though. Luck is a combination of stacking upon habits and habits. And people often say to people, "Oh, you're so lucky," but they forget about all the work that you did to get to that point to have that so-called luck. And it's all the habits, it's all the education, it's all having the right team members, anticipating different things to ensure that that happened in that moment. So
Yeah, and if you kind of compare two different types of people, you have the individual who just kind of automates their savings, right? Kind of like the tortoise strategy, just slow and steady, just systematically putting the money in the market and investing over time. They're going to generally outperform the individual who's trying to invest during the perfect time. The perfect time might be when they actually have excess funds. The perfect time might be when the market's performing in a certain way. But usually the people who just automate it, set it aside, they forget about it, they don't look at it on a daily basis. We have people who like to do that from time to time. They're the ones that actually have that long-term success. So um, it's not necessarily about luck. It's about, like you said, Ryan, just doing the things you need to do to be ready for those opportunities, right? And then the wealthy, they typically share common habits, and I think I mentioned this in the recent um, interview, Eric, that you did for us. It's on our website now, of all the of Ryan, Eric, Denis, and myself. But one of the things that I found in working at the bank when I was a young banker, the wealthy individuals, the people who had financial success, they set goals, right? That's very important. It's kind of like if you want to get on a ship and go on a cruise out in the ocean, you don't just throw the boat in the ocean and just start puttering around. Like, you need to put a plan in place. You need to have a goal. I want to get to this destination, and plan it all out and make sure that we follow the route, right? Financial success is no different. What's your end goal? We talk about that with a lot of our clients, and what do we need to do to get you there, right? Continuous learning, that's another big one. You have to educate yourself, inform yourself. It's amazing sometimes, again, when we sit down with clients and we talk about certain situations, how misinformed they actually are. Then we provide them with the facts, and we'll ask them, well, where did you get your information from? A neighbor or Google? But Google, they were pulling data from like the US and had nothing to do with what they're trying to do in Canada, because products can be different. And the final one is really disciplined investing. Is just be disciplined, right? If you have no discipline and you're just going to invest money here or there whenever you kind of feel like it, whenever you feel is the right time, that's chances are you're not going to achieve financial success, right? So it's not all about luck. It's about process. It's doing the hard work. Ryan, you're a former hockey player. You know that you had to go through a process to get ready to be on the ice at your peak, right? Athletes, you talk about, NHL athletes as well. Same thing. They have coaches that help them to reach their peak performance. It's all about being disciplined. So, Eric, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of covers the key. Preparation is what makes you ready for luck when it comes along. So,
Well, let me ask you this, because you like going to the mountains, and you're doing like the backcountry stuff. Like, my guess is you don't just kind of pick up and go, or maybe you do. Normally, there's some planning that's involved, right? If you're going to go away for a week, for example, or 2 weeks, I'm sure there's some planning before you end up going to the mountains and do kind of what you do as a. I guess you're not technically a mountaineer, are you? Or you're just someone who likes to
yeah,
hang
no,
out?
I do a lot of mountaineering as well. It really, it's varied, and there's two big factors. Ryan covered both of them. One is the preparation, having the habits, having the skills, being ready for it, and then the other one is just doing it, being kind of regular at it. And the more you do it, the more you get to the point where, like, again, if a friend called me up tomorrow and said, "Hey, let's go to the mountains for this weekend," in 15 minutes I could be in my vehicle because I have those habits built. I have the gear ready. I have and so I think that when it comes down to people saying things are about luck, I'll go out and take some photos, and people are saying, "Man, that's beautiful. Like, you sure are lucky to get to go do that stuff." And it's nothing about luck. I mean, being there when it's cloudy and the sun breaks and it's beautiful for like 3 minutes of, a 4-day weekend where it's just soggy and gross the entire weekend. Sure, that moment is luck. But everything that I did that said, okay, let's be there and be ready. And I mean, maybe I'm there when there isn't that beautiful scenery, but the times that you get lucky are the times where you've done the work before. And Jim used the boat analogy. I mean, sure, throwing a boat in the water and paddling in circles is going to get you to Hawaii probably a little bit faster than someone who sits on the beach and watches the people paddling around in boats. But both of those require action. And without the action of getting in the boat and without the plan of knowing where you're going to go, those two things in concert will get you places that other people will then look at you and say, oh man, you're lucky. And it's, well, maybe, but only because I was in the boat and I had a plan when the luck came along. And so, it is important, that preparation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Like, honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. So that was awesome. So you know what? We've wrapped up the 5 myths. I invite you as the listener and a viewer, which one was the one that surprised you the most? So if you'd like, you can put that in the comment section. This is going to be on YouTube and on our podcast and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all those things. So let us know, like, which myth out of the 5 surprised you the most. Guys, I mean, this is the last one of 2025. For any of you that are watching or listening, a lot of hiccups today. Probably, I think today we sounded more like rookies than the pros that we think that we are. But it just goes to show, anything can happen, right? This isn't a big production, right? We're just a couple of guys that are advisors. We love what we do, yeah, I'm just really grateful for our listeners and our viewers. The listenership has grown this year. The viewership has grown this year as well, and we're hoping for bigger things in 2026. So, any final comments, Ryan, that you want to say?
Eric, you hit it nail on the head as far as everything, preparation and luck. Having a great team around you and the support that you need, no better way to start it off without reaching out to us, TVH Group, TVH Financial, help help you. Make sure 2026 is a great one. So.
There you go, Jerry McGuire. Eric, any final comments before we shut her down?
Yeah, no, I think you guys said it both. We love to work with people, help them build those plans, build those habits, and understand what the market looks like and how to navigate it. So, yeah, give us a ring. That's why we love doing what we do.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, have a wonderful rest of the year. Today's December the 15th. So a couple more weeks left in the year, and looking forward to reconnecting in January of 2026. Take care.